What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over two things that you're going to want to have if you use the Spiderman Web Shooters in Season 3. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, comment down below what you think of the Web Shooters in Season 3, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolvedJake, just like my channel name is, and is underneath the webcam at all times. So, initially, when playing with the Web Shooters in Season 3, when they were brought back, for a while, I thought they actually removed the potential for fall damage from this item, because anytime I got shot out, I wasn't taking fall damage. And then also, anytime I was shooting other players out, they weren't taking fall damage either. But it is still a potential chance for players to get fall damage with the web shooters if they don't have these other items that we're going to be talking about. You won't just full on get eliminated from the fall damage like how you could in the past. Last season, Fortnite made it to where if a player was going to take lethal fall damage, they will be left with 1 HP instead. But there is an animation that, your character splats onto the ground where you can't really do anything during that animation. So if you have eyes on a player that you shoot out with these web shooters, they're as good as dead going down to 1 HP. And then the web shooters themselves also go on cooldown. So the two things that can really help prevent this are going to be the shock rocks and the air sprite. Because for starters, the shock rocks, having these on your character will prevent you from taking fall damage. If you hit a rift or like a launch pad, I think, then the shock rocks no longer come into play, and then you don't get that protection until after you land. But at other stages in the game, if you have shock rocks actively on your character, you don't take fall damage. It's not just that you could use them to, avoid the fall damage. You just won't take it entirely. So having shock rocks on your character makes the web shooters a lot better. And this is really nice because this is already an item that you're going to want to have. Shock rocks are very good, very impactful this season. So it's something that you're already going to want to be using anyways. But they can also help deal with getting shot out. Not only do you not take fall damage, but you don't have to deal with that, being stranded in no man's land situation. Because even if you don't take fall damage, being, dropped onto potentially a pretty bad area and not having your web shooters ready to go, because when you get shot out, I think they go on cooldown for 15 seconds. If the web shooters were like your only form of movement, then being caught in no man's land like that is potentially going to be the game for you. And even if you have your pocket item ready, or maybe you have overdrives on your character as well, the, need to swap to that item and then use it might be enough time for you to, potentially get eliminated or take a lot of damage to the point where the player, wants to continue chasing you. Whereas with shock rocks, if you're, using your web shooters and you get shot out, you won't take fall damage, which is great. But also you can just immediately use your rocks and then get out of there and avoid that kind of bad situation. That's always been one of the kind of core problems or core weaknesses of these web shooters or grapple glove items, is not only the potential fall damage, but the fact that the enemy has a say in whether or not you're using your mobility. And the shock rocks, I think, perfectly, get you out of those bad situations and shore up one of the weaknesses of the web shooter, while also making it to where you don't have to worry about fall damage. So I would highly recommend carrying shock rocks and always having some active on your character if you're going to be using the web shooters, because then you can use them a lot more like freely without having to worry about those consequences. The other thing that can really help you avoid fall damage is going to be the Air Sprite, because when you have the Air Sprite on, you don't take fall damage at all. And so the Air Sprite pairs well with the web shooters, because then you don't have to worry about taking fall damage. You also get, the nice benefit of the Air Sprite having the sprint jump improved, and then also having that faster sprint speed. But if you do get shot out and you're in a bad situation, you still could get punished in a more so way than you would with the shock rocks. I would like to have shock rocks, obviously, but if you dislike the shock rocks for whatever reason, having the Air Sprite will also help you a lot when it comes to these web shooters, because then you won't have to worry about fall damage. And I think the web shooters kind of pairs well with the Air Sprite in general. Like, if you like using the Air Sprite, one of the kind of inconveniences of the Air Sprite is that with shockwave grenades or overdrive grenades, you often can sprint jump out of range of that item. And that makes me not want to use the Air Sprite most of the time, because it's a very good sprite. It's really good in fights. Having that improved sprint jump gives you a huge advantage on opponents. And in a lot of fights, it's something that your opponent has to react to in real time. Like, it's a different fight for them than how fights normally play out. And since you're the one using the sprite, you go into the fight kind of knowing that you have it, knowing that you have that advantage. And it just makes things a lot easier for the person that's actually using it. So you get an advantage in fights with it. You get the traveling advantage with the faster sprint. and in zero build, you can take out your pickaxe to have unlimited stamina, and that combo pairs really well. The main problem with the Air Sprite, like I said, is just the fact that you can grief your shockwaves and grief your overdrive nades. Well, for me, if I'm carrying the Spiderman Web Shooters, I end up replacing my overdrive grenades for them. Like, they're kind of competing for that same second mobility slot. So if I have the Web Shooters, then I'm already probably not carrying overdrive grenades. And with some recent changes, there are now crash pads in the pocket item vending machine. And crash pads, you know, aren't as great as shockwaves in most instances, but one of the ways that it works really well is that you just throw it down and then you sprint into it. And with the Air Sprite, you can do that and then not have to worry about messing up your movement item or, you know, outpacing it in the same way. So if you are going to use the Air Sprite, the crash pad pocket item pairs really well, I think, because then you just avoid that potential weakness, or you avoid that potential pitfall of what the Air Sprite brings. And this also kind of pairs well with the Spiderman Web Shooters, because if you're using the Shock Rocks and Spiderman Web Shooters as your main mobility, you do kind of lack for like pushing mobility sometimes. Like, sure, you can use the Shock Rocks for that, but in a lot of instances, I want to save my Shock Rock charges for like very important moments or chasing other players that are using Shock Rocks. And then the Web Shooters aren't the greatest pushing mobility because an enemy can just shoot you and then prevent you from using your item. The Pocket Shockwave, you know, can get that done. But if I'm relying only on that to be pushing mobility, I think I would rather have the crash pads, because in a lot of instances, they are just as good, but you get 2 of them with a faster cooldown. So if you're having to rely more on your pocket item for that pushing slot, I think the crash pads may actually be the better choice. You do have the potential problem of enemies shooting it out, and with shockwaves, you could break structures and all that. There's some give and take there. But in a lot of instances, I think I would rather have the crash pads if I am going to be relying on the pocket item more for my, you know, pushing mobility, just because you get 2 of them and it cools down faster. And so all these things kind of go well together hand in hand. The Air Sprite prevents you from taking fall damage, which, you know, solves one of the potential problems of the Web Shooters. The crash pads kind of pair better with the Air Sprite, because then you don't have to worry about outpacing your movement item when you try to sprint jump. You just throw it down and then sprint into it, and the better sprint you get from the Air Sprite is going to make that a little more convenient. And then also the kind of quantity of the crash pads and how frequently they come back, I think also pairs well with the Web Shooters, because then you can just use them more loosely, and, you know, they're going to come back sooner. So if you have to use them more often in fights because you're using the Web Shooters, it's not as big of a deal, because, you know, you have 2 of them and they come back faster. So I think these kind of 3 things, but mainly 2, the Shock Rocks and the Air Sprite, you're going to want to have at least one of those if you're using the Web Shooters to negate fall damage, and that really unlocks the ability to use this item a lot more freely to actually travel the map and not be constantly worried about fall damage. The crash pads, I think, also pair really well because they pair well with the Air Sprite, and, you know, it's a more rechargeable pushing item. So if you are going to be using the Web Shooters in Season 3 because you like having that traveling item and you like being able to get around the map really quick, I think these 3 things definitely need to be considered. At the very least, one potential solution to fall damage, because if you have to worry about fall damage with the Web Shooters, it's just a lot worse item, and it's a lot more like restrictive in how you use it. But that is going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think of the Web Shooters down in the comments below. I actually enjoyed this item a lot more than I thought I would in this season, and it's mainly because of these things. Being able to avoid fall damage and have the pocket item for still pushing makes me appreciate this item a lot more than I did in previous seasons, where it was like kind of directly competing with shockwaves and there wasn't as easy of a solution for fall damage. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.